Today on the channel, we are making a healthy beer. This is an Açai berry sour because after all this festive season of Christmas and New Year's, we need to freshen up, we need to detox, and we need to get healthy. So today, come along and join us as we make a healthy beer to kick off 2025. Right, now the first step to our brew day is going to be adjusting our water chemistry. We aren't using RO water for reference, we are using our own local tap water. So our numbers are going to vary slightly from yours depending on the water source that you're using. But based on parts per million, we are going to be running with 46 parts of calcium, 5 parts magnesium, 15 parts sodium, 55 parts per million of chloride, 55 sulfate, and 57 parts per million of bicarbonate. So I'm going to go ahead and add my salts into my strike water now before it gets too hot, so that it also has time to dissolve before we start adding in all of our grains. All right, nicely done. Oh, and we are also going to be using 3.3 milliliters of phosphoric acid to adjust our starting pH whilst we start throwing in our grains. Now, let's start talking about what we're going to be running with for the grist. The grain bill for this Açai sour beer is going to be quite basic, to be honest. It's following a very similar structure to most of the sour beers that we have done in the past. Links to some of those are going to pop up there throughout the video because we have done quite a few of them now. But it is just going to be 41.8% Pilsner malt and 37.1% wheat malt. That's it, pretty basic beer. So I'm gonna crush this up and then we can get to mashing. Oh, I am also going to use rice hulls because when you use a lot of wheat, rice hulls are very, very useful. I'll probably just use like 400-ish grams of rice hulls, which is like 1 pound for those of you on freedom units. Now, let's crush this. Now we are ready to mash in our sour. So we are going to be mashing in with a total of 15.5 liters of strike water at 65 degrees Celsius. And there will be freedom units showing up all over the screen throughout this brew day for all of you North Americans out there. We are going to be using the paint mixer to blitz it all up because it just makes our life a whole lot easier. And I'm going to keep this water recirculating while we do so to make sure that we don't end up with any dough balls and we get maximum efficiency. Okay, now that the mash in is done, let's turn off that pump before I spray myself with hot liquid. Now that the mash in is done, I'm going to place the top screen over the top of the grain bed to stop all the grain from getting sucked down into my inbuilt pump. Let's push that down, beautiful. I can now start recirculating this mash and we're gonna get some awesome B-roll for you. And we are now gonna let this sit for 1 hour at that 65 degrees Celsius. At the end of that, there's gonna be an automated mash out to help with the viscosity and the sparging of this whole thing. But honestly, this stuff is flowing through so easily. I probably added too much rice hulls, to be fair, so that's not really gonna be too much of a problem. But at the end of that, we will come back for time to start sparging. We are not sparging yet, but I just forgot to mention that if you're enjoying this video and you want to see some of the other stuff that we've done, don't forget to give this video a like and hit subscribe down at the bottom and turn on that notification bell so that you get all the latest videos when we drop our weekly content for you guys here on YouTube. Now we'll see you when it's time to start sparging. We now have finished our mash step, so we are going to raise this grain bed. Oh, that's nice and light today. It's always a nice surprise because we've done some very high gravity beers lately. That's a very, very small grain bed. That was beautiful. We're gonna let this drain out and start whacking some sparge water over the top to bump up our efficiency. This is draining a lot faster than I expected, so I need to work kind of quickly now. Whoops, I'm gonna start spilling stuff everywhere. Let's get that kind of close. There we go, that works. It's very likely, honestly, that I added too much rice hulls. I mean, I would rather that a beer drains too fast than too slow, but you also don't want it draining too fast because you can get channels forming in the grain bed. What that means is water will always follow the path of least resistance. So if there's like a crack, so to speak, through the grain bed that opens up, the rest of the sparge water and the rest of the wort is just going to keep draining through that particular crack because that's the fastest way for the liquid to get to the bottom. So if it's draining too quickly, you can get a lot of these cracks and that actually hurts your efficiency. Just a little bit of a word to the wise, maybe halve the amount of rice hulls that I used in this one. I think I used twice as much as I normally use because I'd normally use about 400 grams slash, a pound when I am doing a double batch on the bigger Brewzilla, but didn't really think that through on the smaller batch today. Just a bit of a brain fart. Anyway, I'm gonna rinse and repeat this. Already added my phosphoric acid and salts to the sparge water as well, by the way. 15.5 liters of sparge water, so it's 1-to-1 between strike and sparge. And then at the end of this, we'll move on to our next step to make this healthy Açai sour. Back in a tick. Now this is where things start to differ a little bit between a regular brew day and a sour beer. In this particular case, we are making a kettle sour. So what that means is we need to sour up this beer overnight inside the boil kettle before we get to that next step, so that we can actually give the bacteria, the lactobacillus, the chance to munch away at a bunch of the sugar, start producing a ton of lactic acid, and then that lactic acid is what's going to give us our flavor and our acidity and that drop in pH for our final beer for this to actually be a sour. So you could absolutely use filler yeast for this. If you don't want to do this step, go ahead and use filler yeast. We've got a video up here comparing filler yeast sour versus kettle souring. I'm a bigger fan of the kettle sour, so that's what we're going to do today. You could also just drop a bunch of lactic acid in a finished beer as well. It just makes less of a complex flavor, if that makes sense. It's not quite as full as what I would like my sours to be. So I need to cool this down to bacteria pitching temperature. Let me hit that switch. There we go. Which means I need to drop this down to around 35 degrees Celsius, and then I'm gonna hold it between 33 Celsius to 35 Celsius for around 24 hours after pitching my lactobacillus. And this is where it's gonna be kind of nature at play here. There's only so much you can help to speed things up or to kind of get things to where you want. The bacteria is gonna do what the bacteria is gonna do. I believe last time I did this, it took about 28 hours. I want my beer to be slightly less acidic than that one. That was the green Skittle sour. Link to that video up there. But I'm gonna aim for around that 24-hour mark and then take another pH reading then. But what we need to do first is drop this to 33, 35 C so we can actually pitch that bacteria. Now we are ready to pitch our bacteria. And in the place of our bacteria, we have Yakult. Now the reason I use this is because it's extremely widely available, it's very consistent, it's produced in excellent laboratory settings, and it's very, very cheap. So it's very accessible for every home brewer to just get their hands on this stuff from their local supermarket. I'm gonna be using 8 of these 65 ml bottles, which is 520 mils of Yakult, which I believe is 52 billion cells, which is more than enough lactobacillus for this particular pitch here. So I'm gonna tip each and every one of these in. I'm also taking a pH reading. I suspect my pH meter is actually out because I haven't calibrated it in quite a while. It's telling me it's 5.78 at the moment, which I think is higher than it probably is, but I'm not super fussed about this initial reading. The one I'm going to care about is in 24 hours from now to assess if it's hit the pH that I want. I think I'm gonna aim for somewhere in the realm of 4.2 kind of territory. I need to check my notes. I think that's what I'm aiming for. It'll show up here if it was something else. But now, the next time you guys see me will be when this is sat for about 24 hours and we come back to take a pH reading to see if we're ready to start boiling. It is now actually just about exactly 24 hours later, and the pH has dropped to 3.41, which is bang on the money. So I was wrong yesterday when I said I was aiming for 4.2 or something. I could not remember. It was around 3.2 to 3.4. That was the ballpark. That's kind of the range of a Berliner Weiss. Typically, I'm right at the top end of that range because I don't like super sours. I like to be sour enough to be refreshing, but I don't really want it to attack my teeth and make me feel like I'm drinking stomach acid. So I'm now starting to heat up the kettle to boiling temperature to cease all the lactic acid production from the lactobacillus. And then we're gonna move on with the next step of our brew day as per normal. We're not boiling yet, but I just thought that now while I'm waiting for this, it's as good a time as any to mention that if you do want to support the channel, you can jump into our Patreon down below and get more behind the scenes and talk to us directly, or pick up some cool merch from our website, theflyingwombat.com.au. Now, we'll come back at the boil step. Oh, also a quick gravity sample told us that this is sitting at 1042 pre-boil, which is definitely over target, because I think pre-boil target was like 1036 or something. We want this to be really low ABV. It's probably gonna be higher ABV than we planned for, but oh well, efficiency was too high. Terrible of us, terrible. It's gonna be a boozier beer than we wanted. There's worse things. And we are boiling. That is close to a boil over. Am I gonna have problems? Am I gonna have a repeat of the 100% oat NEPA? Link to that video up there. I might kill one of these elements for just a second while I do this. Sorry, I know I'm doing this terribly, but here is the first boil hop addition, which is going to be 6 grams / 0.2 ounces of Huell melon hops. And wow, that was close to a boil over. This is going to give us pretty low IBUs, only 5.7, because the goal of this beer when it comes to hops is just to have enough hops to still taste like beer, but really it's the sour character and the fruit that's going to be the star of the show. So I'm not too, oh geez Belize, oh no, I've screwed up, please stop, that was so close. Anyway, start your clocks. We'll come back at the end of the hour with 5 minutes left to go, where we will add our flavor and aroma hops. Now we have 5 minutes left remaining, and it's time to throw in our final hop addition, which is going to be 15 grams / half an ounce of Huell melon, giving us a total of 2.4 IBUs. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to talk about why we chose these hop varietals. And the answer is quite simple. This is a German beer. It's a Berliner Weiss, so I want to use German hops. I don't want those hops to be super herbal or super floral like a lot of other noble hop varieties, because I want this to be a fresh, fruity beer. It's going to be filled to the brim with Açai, which is already a very acidic and sweet kind of berry flavor. So Huell melon kind of plays into that. It's got like rock melon type flavors, it's got kind of sweet fruit type flavors. So I think that even the small amount that's there plays nicely when you add fruit to the final product. 5 minutes left with that, then we're gonna start cooling this thing down. And that is our boiling done. So we are now bringing this down to yeast pitching temperature. I will grab my refractometer. And we will take a little gravity reading while we're at it. I know this isn't super hygienic, but it's me drinking this beer, so, you know, whatever, it's fine. It's still boiling, she'll be right. Anyway, let's take a little reading now. We have how much in here? About 25 liters of wort, and it's sitting at 1.047. So, that's gonna be a lot boozier than I thought. I think that's gonna be about 5%, 5.5%, 5.7%, somewhere in that ballpark. I was aiming for like a 4% Berliner Weiss, but I guess we're not gonna get that. I know that I can dilute this down, but honestly, I'm not that stressed about hitting numbers with this particular beer. I'm chasing flavor, I'm not chasing the numbers, so it's totally fine. I'm gonna get this down to about 25-ish degrees Celsius. At that point, we can talk about what yeast we're gonna use and how we're gonna ferment this bad boy. Right, we are now coming out at yeast pitching temperature, so we can start, wow, the tube's moving everywhere. We can start the transfer. Let's balance that there, I guess. There we go, it worked. It's fine. But now that this is transferring, we can actually have a quick chat about the yeast we are gonna be using for this one. We are going to be using 12 grams of US 05. Well, technically this is Oz 05 from Brewcariots, but basically the exact same strain. And the whole reasoning behind that is because we want the yeast really to just get out of the way of this beer. We don't want it throwing off a whole bunch of esters or phenols or anything like that. We want the acidity from the lactic acid, and then obviously the Açai berries to be the real star of the show. So US 05 is an excellent strain for that. It's clean fermenting, quick fermenting, it's super reliable, and it folliculates out very well if you have the ability to cold crash, which is all ticks in the boxes that we are looking for. So 12 grams, I should have made a starter, but honestly, I've been having very decent success without starters lately, so I've just gotten a little bit lazy. But if you do have the foresight to make a starter, go for it. 12 grams if you are just gonna pitch in dry. Now, let's go pitch this. Also thought worth mentioning, I do still oxygenate my, my batches before I throw the yeast in. I just often don't show it on camera anymore, but I haven't done it in a while. So you can use just a paint mixer like so, which just about anybody has from a hardware store, or you can use the air pumps like you get for aquariums. We got one with a carb stone. Both work great. If you're gonna use the paint mixer, just, you know, give it a good blitz. And that just helps to suck air down into the wort, so you're getting enough oxygen in there for the yeast to have a healthy kickoff when they start fermentation. Now it is finally time to actually pitch our yeast. By the way, I did actually have another look at my refractometer because something wasn't adding up. The calibration was out. It was 5 points too high, which actually means the pre-boil gravity was 1037 and the post-boil gravity, original starting gravity, is 1042, which is so much more in the range of what we're looking for. It's still high, don't get me wrong, but it's way closer to what we're actually after. Anyway, in the yeasties go, they're gonna do their thing. I'm gonna seal this up and whack the jacket on it, which I don't know if we're gonna have the full video out for, but if that review video is out, it's gonna show up here. If it's not out yet, eventually it's gonna show up there. So we're gonna do a full review on the Keg King jacket that you can wrap around just about any fermenter and the basically the attachments that go with it. In any case, now you will see me when it is time to pitch our acai berries, which I believe will be about a week to 2 weeks from now. I want to do it at the tail end of fermentation, so this will probably ferment out pretty dry in about a week. So yeah, we'll pitch those berries in a week from now. It is now day 4 of fermentation, so that took off way faster than I expected. So it is time to add all of our acai berries. Now, there's a way that we're gonna do this, but just before I do that, I need to explain what we're working with. So I've got 2.4 kilos of frozen acai blend here. But the thing is, acai berry smoothies are typically not just the acai berry. It's normally with like some banana or mango or like mixed berries as well. So if we're gonna try and make like a healthy acai berry beer smoothie type thing, may as well try and emulate that flavor. So I'm gonna go 1 kilo of just generic frozen mixed berries and 2.4 kilos of acai. And then I'll let that sit in the fermenter for a couple of days as it gets through that little bit of extra sugar that we're adding. And we'll see what it tastes like. If it needs a bit more of a flavor boost after that, I can always add something more, but I think this is a pretty good starting point to kind of get that acai flavor into the beer now. So the way that I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna empty out all the berries into a bucket. I'm then gonna pour some hot water over top of it so it's a little bit easier to blend. And then I'm just gonna have to work through this blending many times with a Nutri-Ball that is way too small for this job. Then we can actually add that to the fermenter. So let's get started, I guess. I am quite curious as well to see what, oh, they come as like little packets. Okay, that's annoying. So I'm gonna have to open each individual one. Okay. Now that that is all done, we can actually go pouring our big giant puree into this bad boy, which is sitting at 1008. I already said that. Yeah, so it's already basically fermented out fully. So this is going to kick off new fermentation again. Let's try and get this out of the way and do this as quickly as possible without making a mess, which seems very impossible. Oh my God, please don't spill. Go in, yay. So far, so good. It's working, it's full, it's gonna explode at the top. Okay, that's something I didn't consider. I didn't actually look at where our liquid level was at. And now we've got a problem where this absolutely wants to explode out the top because all that yeast is gonna be going bananas with all that sugar that I've just added. Stop, no, close. Wow, that was close. That was close. Okay. You can't actually see what I'm looking at, so let me bring you over here. That was extraordinarily close to an enormous puke, I guess you could call it, almost like distilling terms, but yeah, that came very, very close to the top of the fermenter and exploding outwards. So I am going to have to do this slowly. I am going to let that sit for a little bit while it kind of degasses itself, and I'll burp the fermenter occasionally. Once that foam has settled down enough and it stops rushing back up to the surface every time I open it, then I'll add more puree in. Oh geez, that was close. That was close. Okay, we did manage to get the rest in there. It is really pushing the boundaries. The liquid level is up to like 27 liters or something, which is like, I don't know, 7 gallons? 7 gallons. This thing really can't take much more than that. I don't really have any headspace left. So I hope to God we don't get a massive blowout. I'm gonna have to be quite careful with this actually, because we have you know, a beer connect and a gas connect here, and that's it. So if that gas connect gets blocked up on the letting the gases out, this thing can absolutely explode. Did not think that through. Really should have checked the amount of volume that I had sitting in here. Anyway, if I do get an explosion, I will tell you all about it soon, but if not, the next time you see me will be when this is a finished product and I can show you what an Açai sour looks like. And here is the final result. Now, first things first, the color is freaking awesome. It definitely absorbed all that acai berry purple goodness. It really does smell and taste a freakish amount like an acai berry smoothie. One thing I do need to point out though, is I suspect acai berries are quite high in oils, like healthy style oils, because this thing struggles to hold head, and none of our Berliner Weisses have had this problem before. So maybe throwing some oats in there, not oats, maybe some flaked wheat for head retention is not a bad idea if you want to recreate this and just have that pink head hanging around for a little bit longer. But the flavor is freaking phenomenal. It is so, so refreshing. It's like it's obviously sweet. It's sweet for a beer, I should say, but it doesn't have the level of sweetness as like the cherry sour did or as like the raspberry sour did. This one is a little more earthy sweetness, I suppose. And I know that I mentioned this before, I think when I took a sample or something, or that might have been on Patreon. Link to Patreon down below if you want. But something I didn't realize about acai berries is that they're not super fruit forward sweetness, but kind of that earthy, almost resinous style of sweetness, kind of like pine-like dankness. So it's quite an interesting sour in that I find it really moreish. I can actually have it again and again, and it doesn't feel like it's cloying on my mouth. It doesn't feel like it's overpoweringly sweet and full of sugar, which is really, really cool. It did finish around 5%. I haven't done the full mass on this to calculate the dilution and everything with the berries, but I'm not super fussed about it. Somewhere in the ballpark of 4.5% to 5% is where this thing would sit. So I would call this an absolute success. It's actually weird how healthy this beer feels like it is to drink. It doesn't feel like a beer. It's very, very odd. It does feel refreshing like an acai berry smoothie, which I guess was the point of the video. So achievement unlocked. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Let us know what kind of beers you'd like to see in the future in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers guys, catch you next week.